Hi, I'm Adam Camilleri and welcome to episode 3 of Gaming Against the Grain, a Warhammer 40k podcast which tries to make the uncompetitive and unconventional armies work. On today's episode, we will be going over some listener questions, 2 lists for review, my year in review, as it is the end of the ITC season, my Templar's army concept, and one thing all competitive armies need. So first up, listener questions, and Steve Harrington writes, how do you feel about ITC point farms? Like 6-man rogue trader tournaments thrown together in a mate's backyard? Or how do you feel about scores being submitted and accepted to the ITC for non-ITC events? So this is actually a pretty good question, something that's actually quite relevant to today, especially seeing as it's just the start of a new ITC season. And what you'll find is quite a few people rack up small RTT wins quite quickly. Them and a few friends will get together and they'll start testing lists out for the new year. Now, some people see this as right, some people see this as wrong. I really don't have an opinion of it, and I'm kind of the opinion that it's, by the end of the season, it's quite irrelevant what they do, because the ITC is structured so that only 3 RTT ranks matter to your overall score. So only out of your 5 scores that are taken together to kind of get your rank and get your position in the standings, only 3 of those could be RTTs. So if you were to go out and farm 3 of them, it wouldn't matter by the end of the season. I'm sure for those interested, if you go and have a look at the past seasons, you'll see that the top 10, probably the top 20, even hell, the top 50 won't have a mass amount of RTT wins. Most of them will have GTs, majors, and the biggest part of their scores will come from those. The great thing about having 3 RTTs means that smaller communities, for example Australia, we don't get the chance to have many GTs and many major level events in our season because the dint of our population is so small and our country is so big. Getting around to each state is a lengthy process and quite expensive. Just this weekend gone, I went to CanCon, which was the ITC championships, kind of our equivalent of the LVO for Australia, and that was a 6.5-hour drive to get to another state to do that major, and that was one of only, I think, about 4 or 5 majors in the country for a year. So being able to have RTTs to pad out scores, I guess padding out's the wrong word, to fill in your scores is a really good thing. Now, whether you're farming those and making up the scores, that's certainly unethical and not right. And I mean, how do you police it? The ITC works because it's all inclusive. For those of you who don't know, my professional background is in community services, and we would call the ITC an all-inclusive format, which is why it's appealing to so many people. It's because anybody can be a part of it, anybody can join in, anybody can run an ITC event, and that's the beauty, that's the appeal of it. That's why people want to be involved with it. And to deny that, kind of punish and be punitive towards that, I suppose would detract from why the ITC is so special and so successful. Should it come to the case where this becomes a major issue, though, like there certainly could be a case made, should the ITC become like a professional sport and there's sponsorship, etc., stuff like that. Maybe there is a watchdog body, that monitors how quickly people rack up RTTs and things like that and GT scores. And should people, be logging 3 or 4 RTT scores for one weekend, certainly you could look into that. But for the moment, I don't think it's a major issue. It certainly sucks, but by the end of the season, it doesn't really matter. So hopefully that helps out with that, Steve Harrington. Onto your second part of your question. I think I kind of almost covered it in how do you feel about scores being submitted and accepted to the ITC for non-ITC events. Like I said, the all-inclusive format of the ITC really makes it appealing to others, regardless of what format you use. And part of their selling point, part of the reason why people say, oh, you should always be ITC, is because there's actually no detracting reason why not to. It doesn't actually make you work with anything. All their FAQs, all their things are just suggestions. You can take and leave whatever you like. So I really don't have an issue with that at all. If people want to submit scores, so be it. As long as it's done legitly by the TO and it's not by a player trying to seek advantage, I see no issue. Okay, on to our next question. Mark Doherty writes, can you help design a 2,000 point tournament list for Adeptus Mechanicus, as I don't have the money to get loads of models and not need those models? So the first thing I'd like to say is I'm not trying to steer away from writing lists for people. simply because it takes way too much of my brain time and a lot of effort to try and nut out things for people. And plus, I need the context of what you're really trying to achieve with the army. Like, are you trying to get super competitive? Are you trying to, play with your mates for fun? I suppose, seeing as you've said you want it for tournaments, you want to be kind of competitive, but I always think, I try and think outside the box when people ask me these questions. So I've given this quite a bit of thought, and I'm going to go into some things about Adeptus mechanics that people haven't noticed yet, or people don't see as worthwhile, but I think are really good. But firstly, like there's the main units in AdMech that are really, really good. Like they're top tier things, and of course that's Castellan robots with full fossil blasters, and sniper rangers. So that's the Ranger troops choices with 2 transonic arquebuses. I think that's what they're called. And then there's Onager doom crawlers, and those will be the 3 really, really good choices that will be really good and worthwhile taking in any list you decide to take. They're kind of the 3 power units. And past that, there's Belisarius Call, who's one of the best HQ choices in the game, and is kind of an auto take for AdMech, even though he's only for Mars. One of the great things about him is that his best buff, the ability to add or subtract 1 to the Canticle, doesn't require him to be the Warlord. And doesn't require much at all. You could take him in a small Mars detachment, and have your main detachments be from another Forge World, and you still retain what's so great about Belisarius Call, that +1, -1 to the Canticles. So one of the things that I've seen with AdMech is there's a lot of good synergy. Like one of the really great ones I've seen was Dragoons with Stygi's Dogma, and then they get -2 when they're outside 12 inches. So it gives them a hell of a lot of protection when they push up the board and get aggressive, and that makes them a lot harder to take care of. Some armies, without that benefit of that buff, some armies can just look at them and take them off in, half a second. As soon as you make them -2 to shoot, they become a lot less appealing for people to invest long range, especially one-shot weapons into them. As a guard player, if I've got a Basilisk at the back of the board and I can shoot at a no negative to hit unit, or I can shoot at a -2 to hit unit, you bet your ass I'm shooting at the no negative to hit unit. So yeah. So one of the plays I was looking at, and one of the things that interested me was the Lucius Dogma, which means that you ignore the any rend of 1 or less. Of course, you ignore rend of less. So what you do is you take that Lucius Dogma on your army and then put in a small detachment of Mars with Call. To that way you retain your Dogma throughout your list. And so with that Lucius Dogma, the majority of your army ignores -1, so you ignore heavy bolters, you ignore a hell of a lot of stuff, and then you use that Call buff, the -1/+1, to try and get Shroud's Arm more often. So essentially you're getting a +2 against rend 1 weapons. So ignore the rend 1 and you got +1 on top of that for the rest, and that's across the whole board. This Lucius also gives you access to one of the best stratagems in the game, which is the ability to deep strike. And the idea of deep striking 6 Castellan robots into the middle of the board is pretty appealing. It's pretty scary, and it would actually be quite competitive, because one of the biggest downsides of the robots is their range, and people will try and play out of that range as much as possible. And so being able to firstly hide them from alpha strikes, because unfortunately, if you were playing a pure AdMech list, there's not a great bubble wrap unit that you have access to, or a unit that is like scouts can push back and push back deep strikes and things like that. So you're really at the whims of an alpha strike if someone was to come down with like a Charybdis or Alpha Legion Berserkers, or Blood Angels drop down on you, things like that. But if you were to keep those robots in reserve, all of a sudden you get to dictate the terms to your opponent, and you get to drop them in the middle of the board where your opponent cannot avoid their range. Now, where it gets even more interesting with that is when you take the Chorister Technis, weird AdMech words, and that word for word says, whilst your warlord is on the battlefield, you can reroll the dice whenever you randomly select which canticle of the Omnissiah is being canted. So when you have Call on the table, and you have that with your Lucius Warlord, you not only get +1, -1 for Call being there, you also get to re-roll it. So first turn, you would just auto-choose Shroud's Arm. Next turn, you roll the dice, and you have +1, -1 to it, and if you don't like it, you re-roll it and get +1, -1 to it. So with that makes it very reliable that those Castellans are coming down, and they're going to ignore Rend 1, and on top of that, they're going to have +1 armor across your entire army. and they're deep striking down safely into the middle of the board, which is really sexy play actually. Now, further to that, if you wanted to build into that even more, on your Dominus or Data Smith, you take the Solar Flare Relic for Lucius as well. And then that gives you the ability to teleport that unit once per game. And so then you deep strike your Castellans down into the middle of the board, and then you teleport either your Dominus over to heal them and give them reroll once to hit, or your Data Smith to change their Canticles better. Oh, sorry, no, they're I think they're Doctor Imperatives. You can change those so they can double shoot, or they get the better armor or the better whatnot. And so that would make a really dangerous play. Now, the rest of your army can be a backline defensive army with, say, some rangers with sniper rifles, so maybe some vanguards to bubble wrap some Onager Dooncrawlers. And the Onagers are really awesome. Now, you can either take the Neutron Laser, which is really quite a great anti-armor weapon, because it's strength 10 with a d6 damage, but the great thing about that is you avoid the worst of the variables, so 1s and 2s always count as 3s on the damage roll, and that's really good at mitigating. And I can tell you from experience as playing guard, when you got d6 damage and you roll a 1, oh my god, that sucks, especially when you're shooting something that has a couple of wounds left. So that makes the Neutron Laser really good. Now, past that, you got the Icarus Array, which is the other really good weapon. And that's really good because it has multiple profiles. And if you listen to this podcast or further, you'll hear me advocating, if a weapon has multiple profiles, it is always a premium weapon. So anything that gives you the ability to diversify what you're shooting and have multiple options for multiple targets, or be reliable, have a reliable weapon for regardless of what you're shooting at, whether it be hordes or flyers or tanks, it's always going to be a good weapon to choose. So yeah, Mark, hopefully that helped you. Hopefully that gave you some insight into some different things you can do with that list. I really like the Lucius Dogma, and maybe that'll be a list I do one day. But yeah, there's a lot of synergy with AdMech. There's a hell of a lot to that, more to that book than just Belisarius Cawl and Mars. So yeah, give it a go, and hopefully that was helpful for you. Okay, on to the next question, which has been sent in by a good friend of mine, and if you're watching Hive City Hobby at all, this is the gentleman with the ponytail. His name is Adam Trepevsky, and he's one of the best painters I've ever seen, which is an interesting fun fact. So he asks, if you were a playtester for GW and you could suggest one change to the mechanics of 8th edition, what would it be? Now this one was quite simple for me, and it's not a big, I changed it, always winning on 6s or blah, 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 all that shit. No, I actually would love them to say, decorative elements do not count for line of sight. I hate that in this edition, you are punished for converting, for adding spice and interest to your army, for putting that extra large banner on that unit, for modeling a champion with their sword raised in the air, and all of a sudden you can be seen and they can wipe the whole unit. I really hate that. It shits me up the wall. Or that people can shoot my antenna on my Baneblade. You know how hard it is to get cover on Baneblade, guys? It's so freaking hard. And I hate that they can see my antenna and take out my Baneblade. That shits me. Now, I get paid out by my mates a bit, because early in 8th edition I got challenged to a game by a friend of mine, and I shot and killed a Grey Knight Dread Knight of his from the mud flap off my Stormhammer. The Forge World Stormhammers come with these little mud flaps on the front of the trucks, and I managed to shoot from that mud flap, about maybe 2 centimeters of it, and I killed his Dread Knight. And for the next 2 weeks, my mates paid me out and called me mud flap. And so I haven't done that since. I felt pretty dodgy about that at the time, but yeah, I was seeing a bit red. I wanted to win. So yeah, I hate that people get punished for being creative with their armies and their hobby. I think it's too detrimental. I've had mates who snapped stuff off their models to stop, in competitive armies, to stop them being, taken advantage of, and that just sounds stupid to me. All right, on to the second question. Do you think the ITC breeds an unhealthy amount of clever list writing instead of clever generalship? So for those of you who don't know, I talk about the ITC a bit, but just explaining what it is. The ITC stands for Independent Tournament Circuit, and this is the kind of the body that kept the tournament scene alive for 40k while GW kind of took a sabbatical. So GW pulled out, I think, around the middle or the end of 5th edition, or it was at the start of 6th edition, and they kind of just stopped running events and stopped running games days and things like that. And it's only because of the hard work of people who run the ITC and things like it that the tournament and the competitive scene for 40k continued. So we've got to give them a lot of credit for that. What it's kind of grown into now is it's kind of its own beast. And the goal of the ITC, from what I can discern, is to kind of turn 40k into a kind of an esport. So we can, have games days and have it televised, and we're getting there. Like the whole LVO, which just went by a couple of days ago, was up on Twitch, and that's an amazing achievement. So now there's kind of an extra format added to 40k. There's now open play, match play, and there's ITC, and it's kind of become an accepted format, an accepted way to play the game. And because of that, it's bred its own meta, which kind of forces you to buy into their game style and their missions, their mission structure. And having just played, I just came from the CanCon Championships last weekend. 3 days ago, I was playing games in the championships, and I was playing ITC missions, and they're their own beast. You really have to play those missions if you want to be competitive at ITC events. You need to play into those missions. Now, 8th edition is all about synergy, but you'd think that if it was clever list writing, still the best lists in 8th edition would all be about sheer firepower, because the amount of sheer firepower you can build into a list in 8th edition is quite obscene, which I can tell you from running 3 Baneblades in a list. But the top ITC lists, they aren't crazy firepower armies. They're more surgical, a lot more surgical than that. Like Dark Reapers, you're not seeing people with 40 Dark Reapers win events, and we didn't this weekend. We saw someone with, I think they had 20, but they built in synergy and powers and psychic powers and stratagems to get the efficiency of 40 or 50. And so that is definitely clever list writing. But past that, all the good ITC armies have board control. They have OBSEC. They still play into the basics of this game. And the basics of this game is about movement and removing threats. So your ability to hold objectives and score points while removing your opponent's ability to hold objectives and score points. And so the ITC, while I don't think it's removed that, it's really boiled it down to like a concentrated game. And I can say that those missions are really, really good. I love them. I love them to death. I think they're amazing. Some of the best missions I've ever played. But they do take their own kind of thoughts and kind of structures to play well. So hopefully that helped Adam. All right, moving on. We have a list review, and I've got 2 for us today. Both are Imperium, so if anybody was looking for a Xenos army, I do have a Necron one for next episode, as well as a Chaos one. So, this one opens with, "Yo, dog. I heard you like reviewing lists, so I put a list below. Dog." Someone's channeling their inner Kenny Boucher. Okay, so this opens with a battalion detachment of Ultramarines with Marnius Calgar, Big Papa Mac Smurf himself. He also has a Primaris Lieutenant, 5 Intercessors with an Auxiliary Grenade Launcher, 5 Intercessors with an Auxiliary Grenade Launcher and a Power Sword, and another 5 Intercessors with Grenade Launcher Power Sword. He then has a Primaris Ancient, which he's already said is going to be upgraded to have a standard of Emperor Ascendant. He's got a Relic Sicarian Venator with heavy bolter sponsons, 5 Inceptors with assault heavy bolters, 5 Inceptors with assault heavy bolters, 5 Hellblasters with Plasma Incinerators, a Leviathan Dreadnought, what a boss, with 2 Heavy Flamers, a Siege Claw with Melter Gun, and a Storm Cannon array. He also has a Repulsor with all the guns, all the DACA. So no las cannons there, just all the DACA. It's got 8 CP and 1,999 points. He says, overwhelming firepower, designed to blow enemies off the board. The crux of the army is essentially within the 2 5-man Inceptor squads, one of which can come down in the enemy deployment zone and use Scions of Guilliman to get rerolls, and the second for support firepower in my lines, thanks to Marnius' rerolls to hit. Hellblasters and 1 Inceptor squad run the Repulsor, and the Primaris Ancient acts as insurance for the Hellblasters and or Inceptors. Ultramarines Chapter Tactics ensure I'm always firing at enemies every turn, even after falling back. The Sicarian Venator is for reliable, fast-moving anti-tank, which is needed in the list. Leviathan Dreadnought is in the list purely because the model is cool, and I want to add my army's fluff concept, which is he's a Tyrannid hunting Primaris army, and Captain Cassius has died due to 40k fluff advancement and has been placed in a venerated Leviathan Contemptor sarcophagus. That is awesome. That is so cool. Thus, Marnius has assumed command of the first company because I guess he feels a bit pissed off that Gilliman came back and took all his toys. Alright, so my notes on this army. It's quite a solid all-round, all-comers list. It's working with really good synergy, and I freaking love the fluff around it. I hope this gentleman's going to put a Primaris Proper Smurf conversion on the board as well. The Leviathan Dreadnought for Cassius is freaking amazing. That will look so cool. It has a good range of weapons profiles and ranges. One thing that's downside, it's not getting a huge return for the banner. It's only really got 1 unit of Hellblasters to really capitalize on the Inceptors. But past that, it's just getting like heavy bolter shots out of it, which is good and bad. It's going to struggle with board control, unfortunately, because the downside to Primaris is it's quite an elite army, and it's only got 3 units in the army moving faster than 6 inches a turn. So some things you can consider for this army is dropping a unit of Inceptors for another unit of Hellblasters. It's better for the banner, but you lose mobility. What you would do with that is you'd keep both units of 5 inside the repulsor. You'd get 1 unit out with the banner, use Marnius' rerolls, shoot, kill something. When your Hellblasters die, they shoot and kill back, and then the next one comes out and kills whatever killed the first unit of Hellblasters. And then you're denying the ability for your opponent to wipe both units at once, of course. That's just a really basic play, really. There's not really much to it. Another alternative is to max 1 unit of Interceptors and drop the other one. So 1 unit of 6 and then drop the unit of 5 and take 3 Aggressors. I'm not a huge fan of the Aggressor models. I think you could do some interesting stuff with it if you wanted to take the bits off of that and put them on Inceptors and just kind of beef them up to make them bigger. The idea, fluff-wise, of 3 Aggressors with Flamers facing down like waves and waves of Nids would be amazing for the fluff concept. But Bolt Storms are probably better overall. There's also leaves room for 1 character in the Repulsor too, so you could keep a couple of characters in there as well. Now, the drawbacks of all Primaris is that you've got few unit choices. There's not a huge range. I'm hoping G-Dub will flesh out the range over the next couple of years, and we'll get an Assault Squad variant and a full Devastator Squad variant where you take missile launchers and stuff like that. This has great amounts of firepower. Unfortunately, it's got diminishing returns, so it can't really take a hit. If you were to get Alpha Struck with this army, there's not a hell of a lot you could do to dig yourself out. I mean, I know the Leviathan has a fearsome amount of power, but if someone was to drop a full-blown like Blood Angels Alpha Strike army on you, you'd be in a lot of trouble. You'd have to be sacrificing those intercessors as bubble units, and they're a bit too expensive to be doing that, but you'd have to do it by necessity. So yeah, overall, it's a good list. I love the fluff, and you've built it into the fluff really well, I think. So I'd be happy to play against that list. And the idea of a Primaris Calgar, Big Mac himself, would be bloody sick to see on the board. Alright, so the next one's from a gentleman named Paul Greenwood. And he has a battalion attachment of Space Wolves. And it opens with Harold Deathwolf as the HQ and the Warlord, and he also has a Rune Priest on bike, and he's taken the Stormcaller psychic power, which is giving the benefits of cover in a 6-inch radius from the Rune Priest, which is quite strong. I think Space Wolf psychic powers are the best index psychic powers, and on release were the best ones apart from Soul Burst. The rest of the battalion has 2 Razorbacks with twin assault cannons, 2 units of Long Fangs, all with heavy bolters, and these are 6-mans with heavy bolters, so he's getting full use out of the 6-man transport capacity. He then has 3 units of min-maxed Blood Claws, so just 5 Blood Claws with a pack leader. And then he has a big old 6-man unit of Thunderwolf Cavalry, and they each have a Storm Shield, and 2 of them have Thunder Hammers, and the pack leader also has a Thunder Hammer. Next up, he has a Spear Tip detachment with a Wolfguard Battle Leader, just taking stock. And then he has a Land Raider Crusader with just taking stock with an extra Stormbolter chucked on. Then he has 2 Predators with Predator autocannons. And he hasn't got it listed as got sponsons, but when I chucked it into Battle Scribe, the points only worked out with adding in Las Cannon sponsons. So this list is actually pretty good. I'm just going to read out what he's sent in as the concept. So the plan would be the Blood Cause and Battle Leader in the Land Raider, Harold and the Thunderwolf Cavalry, and the Priest on bike, all going forwards using the Land Raider, Razorbacks, and the Long Fangs to clear screens, while the Thunderwolf Cab hopefully break through to get the bigger targets, with the Thunder Hammers along with the Preds. Priests casting Cover Save spell along with Smite, and hopefully have Harold tank a few shots with his 2++ against shooting. Longfang starting the Razorbacks and get protection from first turns being wiped out. He's even given me a breakdown of the shots he has available at this list. So shooting, he has a 52 strength 4 shots, 30 strength 5 shots, 36 strength 6 shots, and 2d3 strength 7 shots. In melee, he has 54 strength 4, 18 strength 5, and 7 at strength 8. So, and he says the things he struggles with is bubble wrap and area denial, which is understandable. He's got quite an elite list, and he's got a hell of a lot of points invested in both the Land Raider Crusader and Thunderwolf Cavalry. And also those assault cannons, Razorbacks with a full unit of long fangs with heavy bolters is not cheap either. 130 points for the long fangs. So yeah, my notes on this list. It's solid, it's got good mobility and great amounts of fire. It's got melee threats and range threats, which is always good to diversify what you're bringing to the table. This has been built for a specific tournament format, which is coming up, I think, in June, which is called Terracon. Which the restrictions for this is that there's only 2 detachments, and you can't take Forge World at this moment. Hopefully we might get that changed, but we'll see how we go. The 2 detachments is definitely a limiting factor, and I don't expect that to change. So, and this list is doing a good job of making work of it. So one of the issues I see with this list is that only the Predators have any fire past 36 inches. So apart from the Preds, everything else is going to have to push up the board to get into range. And the majority of the best range in this army is at 24 for the assault cannons and the hurricane bolters. So the plan with the Thunder Cav is amazing, actually. So being able to give them a cover save, and then having Harold Deathwolf there for better leadership to negate if you do take a big hit or someone turns off your invulnerable save like Magnus, it's really quite good. Not sure the 6 Storm Shields are needed though. 4 will probably be enough, especially with the cover power because they're going to have a 2-up armor. So against Neg 1, you're getting the benefit of a Storm Shield anyway, regardless of it. Unfortunately, one of the big limiting factors for this, and it's something that Paul has pointed out, is that there's very little bubble wrap and there's no real screens available for Space Wolves, seeing as their scouts don't deploy like regular scouts. They deploy via Deep Strike pretty much. So they have no units that deploy outside the deployment zone, so they can't push back for Alpha Strikes. Bubble wrap, unfortunately, by default, is then 100% needed to stop Alpha Strikes on the tanks. Even if somebody was to just drop down just a crappy assault squad and just get a cheeky charge off that Land Raider, that's 320 odd points. That's now doing absolutely nothing. So you can't let that happen really in a competitive game. So the things that I would do is I would drop the two of the long fangs. So I don't know if you need 2 full 6-mans. I would drop 1 from each squad, and I would drop 2 Storm Shields. Now that frees up enough points to take 14 Fenrisian Wolves. You can either take 2 units of 7 or 1 unit of 14. And the good thing about Fenrisian Wolves is they're freaking cheap. I think they're only about 5 or 6 points, and they got big bases. They're on really big bases, so they take up a lot of room. Every unit of 14 should be enough to bubble wrap along the front of the board and at least block the majority of charge lanes from your Crusader and probably your 2 Razorbacks. So what you would do in that situation is you would deploy across a line towards a table edge. So if you have a table edge anchoring one set of your line, and then you got the Thunderwolf Cavalry kind of doing a deny flank in the middle of the board, and you deploy to the right or to the left down from the Thunderwolf Cav, and then you put your Fenrisian Wolves in front of them, so they get to block the whole front of all your tanks because it's the shortest distance to block. The alternative to that is to do the same thing but with the Blood Claws. So the Blood Claws, they're a kind of a tax unit anyway in this battalion. They're not going to be adding too much that the Thunderwolves aren't going to do 10 or a billion times better. So if you wanted to save the points to keep the list as it is, in games where you're going to get Alpha Struck, or you're at risk of going second against an army that has cheap things like Nurglings that can just walk up and charge your tanks, they're freaking annoying as all shit, I can tell you that. Especially playing guard, having 1 unit of just crappy little Nurglings walk up and charge 2 Leman Russes is a death sentence for a competitive game. So get those Blood Claws out and just screen off that army. Do what I just said before. You use it. It's an old fantasy technique called a deny flank, where you put your biggest unit in the middle and all the stuff you want to protect down one side with the table edge blocking off the other flank for you, and then just deploy in front of them and just screen off. But overall, this is quite a strong list for an index army. Space Wolves are getting left behind. There's no ifs or buts about it. And from what GW has said, Space Wolves might be the last army to get a codex, which makes me think Russ is coming. because they're going to have a big release for them. So that's my instinct on it anyway. So thanks for that, Paul. Hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, get a screen in there if you're worried about it. All right, so moving on, we're up to my year in review. So for those of you who've been paying attention, the ITC season has just wrapped up for this year. Both the CanCon Championships for Australia happened, and also the LVO, the 514 or whatever player major event in Las Vegas went down, which signifies the end of the ITC season. So where did I end up this year? This year I managed to make it to 34th in the world, which is something I'm really proud of. Like I genuinely put a lot of effort in this year. I went to as many events as I could get to, and I did quite well. So in the world rankings, I'm 34th. In the Australian rankings, I made it to 3rd, and I was only 25 points behind the first place. So yeah, kind of cocked it up at the end. I had the ability to come first, but the chips didn't fall that way in the CanCon championships this year. So I also made it to 4th in the world for guard, and I got jumped by a dude named Pelham. I can't remember, but yeah, he must have done really well at the LVO, because he went from, I think, 5th to 1st, I think 1st or 2nd. So he did really well. But yeah, I was kind of 2nd and 3rd throughout most of the end of the season when all my scores came through, and yeah, I just got knocked down to 4th just at the end there. But apart from that, I went back to back 1st place for guard in Australia. So I got there 1st last year, and I got 1st again this year. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I was going strong all year, really. If I look at this season and what I've managed to do, I've gotten 3 RTT 1st places, and no, I didn't farm them. They're all done at a legit venue with 20 people. They're actually quite big RTTs. One of them was 24 players and went for 2 days with 5 games, and it was just unfortunate. We missed out on a couple of people to make it a GT. I got 2nd place at a major, which was Terracon. I was actually 1st place, but that had some soft scores that got me into 1st from 2nd on battle, and so the ITC rank was for 2nd. And I managed to get 7th this year at the ITC Championships. Now I was a bit unhappy with myself for getting knocked off. I was 2nd in that event, literally from after game 1. I think I was in 2nd all the way up until the last round. So that was an 8-round event. So just same as the LVO, we play 8 games, and up until the last game, I was in 2nd, and I lost that game and got dropped down to 7th. Now, there's some reasons for that, which I'm going to tell you guys about, because I've actually done quite a bit of learning out of what happened at the end of this season. So I kind of fell over the end, and a lot of the reason for that is I used the same list for too long. So for the better half, I think, for the better part of 3 months, I've used this triple Baneblade list with a bunch of support characters, like I've used a Calexis or a couple of Eversaws, a bunch of either conscripts when conscripts were still a viable cheap option. Used infantry squads and just things to screen off, and at the end I was using marine scouts just to push out from deep strikers. The problem was I used that list for probably a couple of months too long, and because I was doing so well with that army, I was winning events, and I placed 2nd at the Australian Masters this year, and that's brought a lot of tension to what I was playing. And out of the 8 games I played at the CanCon, 4 of my opponents told me that they built their list with mine in mind. So they built their lists knowing that they might come up against mine. So they had ways and means of tackling what I was bringing. And that certainly lost me a lot of points. I was happy enough that I was able to beat 2 of those 8 opponents. Sorry, 2 of those 4 opponents that kind of built to handle my list, but I only beat them by small margins, which cost me rankings, I could have taken that hit in the last round and still came 3rd or 4th maybe, if I didn't cost points there. And that's a new issue for me. So back in 7th edition, Jesus, no one was going to tailor for a guard list. No one gave a shit enough about a guard list. It was like, oh, bugger that. So I guess doing well with one army for so long brought enough attention to it that people thought, hey, this guy's actually a threat, and I need to be able to build to counter what he's bringing, which is flattering. That's quite flattering, and it's nice to be noticed enough in the scene that people want to contend with what you can do. So yeah, that's my season in review. I was very, very happy that I was able to come 34th in the world. I think it's got about a couple of thousand in the ITC now. So that's something to be proud of, and it's quite hard to do in Australia because our scene is so small. unlike a lot of European in America, where you can go to a GT or a major once a month or twice a month. We only get like a major, once every 3 months if we're lucky, and usually we've got to pay a couple $100 to get there. Damn country is so damn big. Next week I'll be setting some goals for my 2018 season. So moving forward, what I want to achieve in the next season, where I want to finish, and what I'm setting my sights on. All right, moving on to our next topic for today is my Templar army concept. Now, I thought I should give you guys a bit of background, a bit of the fluff around, and a bit of the meat about why I'm interested and excited about this army. I recently went on a trip to Japan, and I brought before I went there, I was getting all G'd up to do a Black Legion army because I just finished reading Talon of Horus, and I thought, Black Legion are the maddest, they're crazy, they're so good, Abby's the best, best ever, and all this shit. And so I took Black Crusade, which is the next novel in the series, and I was planning to read it all the way on the plane there, read it on the way back, and I'd come back all G'd up to do this crazy ass Black Legion army, and had all these amazing conversions in mind and all these things. And I read about this fight that went down between Abby and Sigismund. And for those of you who don't know, Sigismund was the first, I guess, chapter master of the Black Templars, and he was the first captain of the Imperial Fists during the Heresy, and he was the first Emperor's champion because he was just such a boss. Like, he was a one-on-one god. Like, you couldn't beat this guy in a duel. And I read the fight between him and Abaddon at the end of that book, and I just went, holy shit, this guy's amazing! And I just went off on a massive tangent. Black Legion, forgotten. Black Templars, amazing. Let's do it. And it was such a cool fluff piece that I fell head over heels, and I've just been on the Black Templars train ever since. Now, I'm just going to go over quickly the fluff and modelling choices that I've chosen. So, due to my love of that book and the fluff around it, I've chosen to do a Black Templars army that was kind of based around what they would have been like during the Scouring. So, how they, after the Second Founding, and during the first Black Crusade, because they were around, they were defending the Eye of Terror, and around Cadia, when Abaddon and the first Black Crusade came out. And so that means they're going to be Heresy-era Marines. So what I've done is I've gotten the Templar Brethren kits from Forge World, and I've gotten the Burning for Prospero Mark III kits. And I'm turning those guys into Black Templars. The good thing about them is that they come with the Templar cross on one shoulder pad and on the shields, and they also have a fist emblem on the other shoulder. Now, I reckon they look fucking cool. They look fucking cool. The heads on them, they all have wreaths, which I'll be painting gold, and they look really cool. So I wanted to let you guys know what I'm doing with that. So not only is this army going to be competitive and hopefully geared for tournaments and stuff, I'm also making this a fluff army as well. Like, I can't do an army. I can't really get stuck into an army unless I love it for 3 reasons. I got to love the story behind it, I've got to love playing it, and I've got to love painting it. Because if I don't love any of those 3 things, it won't keep my interest long enough to get a really sizable army around it. Past that, some of the other interesting things I've done, I've gotten a Land Raider Crusader. Of course, I've got the Templar doors on it. I've got the Forge World Reinforced Armor upgrade kit. And I've also got 3 of those Predator Reinforced Armor kits for 3 Predators that are coming in the mail soon. I've got a Leviathan Dread with double siege drills. He's going to go around just drilling some dudes in the face. And the idea of the fluff idea of a ravenous, like, crazy zealot Leviathan with just running at dudes just sets my world on fire. It excites the shit out of me. I think it's amazing. And one of the other things I'm doing, I've gotten the Forge World Black Templar Storm Shields, which are really, really cool. And I put them on Cataphracti Terminators, and I've gotten the Thunder Hammers off regular Terminators and put them on them too. Now, hopefully, I'll be taking pictures of all these, hopefully, and all these conversions and stuff when I get my Instagram account up and running, and you guys can join in and have a gaze. If that doesn't get done, then I'll do a video for Hive City Hobby, and I'll put it up there so you guys can have a bit of a showcase of where I'm at with the army. Alright, we are up to our kind of last topic for the day, which is my tip for competitive play for this week. And this one is on screens and bubble wrap. Kind of the one thing every competitive army needs to pretty much have. Like, you pretty much either need to guarantee you have one of these two things, or that you've got a stupidly overpowered Alpha Strike that can come down and wipe away these things, so you don't need it. And if you don't need it, that means you've got all your primary threats off the board, and you don't really give a stuff that they kill the stuff that's on the board. So you don't need it anyway. But to the vast majority of us plebs who don't play Alpha Legion, who don't play Raven Guard, who don't play any of the other major drop Alpha Strike armies, we need these things. And I think even if you do play those armies, building a list with these in mind, or building a list that has the ability to take care of these quickly, is an absolute necessity. Now, these things are important because they take away, they're the things that get a bloody nose for you. They take that first hit so that the things that you care about, the things that you've invested your points in and your killing power aren't taken away. Now, the two things I talked about before, 40k is about movement and removing threats. What screens do is they push back so that you don't have to cop the threats. What bubble wraps do is they cop the threat for you. Now, the difference between the two. So screens, I consider a screen to be something that pushes outside your deployment zone. So Nurglings, Scouts, Cultists with Alpha Legion, things like that. Things that project out from your deployment zone and protect you from being invaded inside. So they have the 9-inch, pretty much a 9-inch bubble around them where people can't deep strike within. Now, bubble wrap is when you physically use a model to stop someone from getting to another model. And so in the example I gave before, it was Fenrisian Wolves lining up in front of tanks. And because of the base size of the Fenrisian Wolves, they're so big that it would be very hard for an opponent to be within 12 inches for them to be able to declare a charge on the stuff behind. Because that's something you need to do. If you're declaring a charge, you need to be within 12 inches of the target you're wanting to charge. The only things that are exceptions to that are, I think, Howling Banshees, and there might be one or two other things that I'm not sure of. So if you don't have access to screens, you need bubble wrap. If you don't have access to bubble wrap, you need screens. If you have access to both and you want both, fucking take both. Can't go wrong. Now, there are some armies that get better mileage out of their screens. At the start of 8th edition, conscripts, they were the best screen in the game because not only were they cheap and they were fearless, they actually did quite a lot of damage with like first rank, second rank, and reroll auras and things like that. Now, you won't get that much mileage out of things today. Most of the really good ones have been nerfed. Like Brimstones, they used to be like the most incredible bubble wrap because they had essentially each one of them had a 25-point Iron Halo upgrade on a 3-point model, and it was retarded. They were so good. Plus, they were -1 to hit from Changeling and stuff. So they're important because they're going to sit there and they're going to die so your other stuff can live. They are going to stop your opponent from removing your threat and your movement to enable the rest of your army to do what it does. And for a small investment, it's not going to change the overall like performance of your list. If you don't want it to, you can easily build in the major threats regardless. So for 200 points, 250 points, you can get what is it? I think it's 5 units of scouts, 55 points each, give or take, and they project up the board. They sit on midfield objectives, which means they have to be removed, and they just piss your opponent off. If they don't deal with them, they can run around and charge tanks. They can get down and just score you points turn after turn. They need to be dealt with. And not only that, they're denying your opponent the ability to interact with the things in your backboard, the things you actually care about and you need to keep there. Now, one thing to be careful of, and this is very specific to bubble wrap, and more specifically to things with small bases like 25 mil bases or 32s, be very careful of your coherency, guys. If you are using bubble wrap, keep in mind what the size of the base is of the thing that they're going to be bubble wrapping against. So you need to be closer together than the base size of the unit you are scared of. So if someone's going to charge you with a 32 mil base, or charge, they're going to try and attack you with something with a 32 mil base, the bases of your bubble wrap need to be closer together than 32 mil. Because if someone is to charge those units, they can stay 0.1 of an inch away from you and then use their pile-in move to touch stuff behind you. So that could be those tanks. That could be Devastators. That could be your Warlord. And then if they're Berserkers, they get to attack a couple of times. They could butcher that Warlord if they declare the charge against them. So those are things to keep in mind. Those bases need to be closer together than the thing you're afraid of. Because you can charge straight through. You can break coherency in the charge phase and the movement phase. Now, I'm just going to quickly run through what the options are for all armies for bubble wrap and screens. For Imperium, you have Scouts, Conscripts, Infantry Squads, Fenrisian Wolves. For Chaos, you have Brimstones, Cultists, Renegade Guard, and Nurglings. Azurani, you have Guardians, Dark Eldar warriors, and rangers. Necrons have scarabs and warriors. Tau have Kroot, pathfinders, and stealth suits. Orcs have absolutely everything if you're brave or crazy enough. And Tyranids have rippers, termagants, and hormagaunts. Now, every army has some kind of option for this. Whether it's points efficient to do it or not is up to you. For Necrons, like I know a unit of 20 Necrons is a damn expensive screen, but absolutely freaking necessary if you've invested 500 or 600 points in a Gorse pylon and someone's dropping down, 15 Death Company. You freaking need that screen, or else you've just lost a shitload of points and you're getting no mileage for that investment. Now, other armies have really cheap ones, like Brimstones. I think there are still 3 points a model, and while they're not as crazy as they used to be, they're still freaking tiny, and you can hide them behind any old pebble of terrain, and they still do their job just fine. Same with Grots for Orcs, or if you're a mad dog, Mega Knobs. Yeah, Mega Knobs is your screen for Orcs, because Orcs are crazy and do everything the opposite of what you should do. Stuff it. Battle Wagons. Use Battle Wagons to screen your Grots. Now, moving on from that, hopefully that was informative. Hopefully that gave you guys a good concept of what to do. Now, one thing I'll touch on before I finish up is when you're screening, and you're looking for the distance that you need to be from screen to screen. So let's say you're deploying Nurglings and you want to stop somebody with... we'll use Death Company again. You want to stop somebody with 15 Death Company, get into your backline, get into your Magnus because they're going first. Now, how do you do that? So what you do is you project exactly 12 inches away from your Magnus, so they can't physically declare the charge on them. So they have to be 9 inches away from the Nurglings you're deploying. Now, when you place a second unit of Nurglings, you can place them 18 inches away from each other, because 9 inches from each side means they have no room in the middle to deploy. You could even put them 9 inches away from each other, and then they could possibly deploy in single file, but they probably won't be able to deploy all of them. And so 18 inches is your key. If you're looking to zone off the majority of the board, you don't need to put them any closer than 18 inches ever if you're going to stop deep strike. And that's just basic stuff. So if you didn't know that, hopefully that's some learning for you. Keep in mind that coherency on bubble wrap, that is really important. If people can charge through your bubble wrap, they fucking will, and they fucking should. So the onus is on you to make sure that works for you. All right, on to closing thoughts. I am moving forward now. This season is over, and I'm closing the door on Guard, this whole chapter of Guard. I might have one more event that I need to take Guard to at the end of February, but I'm hoping to have 2,000 points of Templars to take instead. Should I not have 2,000 points ready, I won't take them. I want to start with a 2,000 point army and move on from there. I don't want to start with chopping and changing. So that's my goal. My goal is to get 2,000 points of Black Templars painted by the end of February. I have a mini event coming up. Well, it's not a mini event. It's actually a pretty big event, but it's only 1,350 points, and it's called Arc, and it's on every year in Melbourne, and it's got about 180 players this year, but it's more of a fluff-based event, and I'm going to go over that format. I'm going to go over the army I'm taking for it next week, and I'm going to go over a lot more about that event. The next thing I want to do is I want to say thank you to everybody who reached out to me at CanCon this year. And this weekend, I had a bunch of people come up and say, we love the podcast, and it was just fucking awesome, guys. So thanks so much. The feedback has been overwhelming. I was actually shitting my pants when I shared my story in the first episode. It took me about 5 times to record it without kind of my voice shaking. Thank you guys for rewarding the courage I put into that. It means a lot to me that I was able to share that story and feel so accepted by the community for it and not rejected, because I still do have some fear around that stuff. So thank you. Next one is I hope you're enjoying the llama out there. And I got this little llama in like a Kinder Surprise, and I put it on my tanks for CanCon, and I was yelling at this llama. I was just being a bit of a goose, just kind of diffused how serious the event was and just had a bit of fun. I had this little llama on my Baneblades, and it would travel on a different Baneblade every game. And when the Baneblade shot well, I congratulated the llama, and the Baneblade shot badly, I berated the llama for doing a shit job and being a crap gunner. And I passed that on to one of the listeners, and I hope you're enjoying it, mate. Hope I get some pictures someday with a little llama on like a Predator or something, or a land speeder. And so just little fun things like that, interacting with the community, just having a joke. I think this community is one of the best in the world, and we got some amazing people here. Now, lastly, I want to touch on a channel, our YouTube channel, Hive City Hobby is a YouTube channel for me and my group. We are creating battle reports. We're doing army lists reviews. We're doing codex reviews. Of course, I'm doing army list reviews. Shit. And we're doing this podcast. And we're going to have painting tutorials. We're going to have hobby tutorials. We're going to have all sorts. We're going to be a holistic hobby channel for everybody. And we're trying to cater to the whole community. So jump on it, look it up. It's Hive City Hobby in YouTube. And we've got some incredible battle reports up there. Like, we're trying to do really good quality stuff, really well painted models, and trying to put out some of the best content out there. So jump on it, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Hopefully I've inspired some people or enlightened some people, taught some new things. But yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody who came up and said hello again at CanCon. You guys are amazing. And thanks so much for the feedback, guys. I'll see you next week. Thank you.